Well, I'm excited to interview you briefly here on the desert. I thought it'd be fun to share some of your experiences in the desert. So let's start with a question. Most college graduates are excited to graduate, and many of them look forward to moving to big cities or to move to areas in the U.S. that would be good for business. I realize the 1960s might have been different, but I think people are still the same. What drove you to the desert?
Well, interestingly enough, I went to work for Schlumberger on January 2nd, 1961, in Horton, Texas. But I spent a lot of time in Houston, Texas. I like cities. I liked Houston, Texas in the 60s. But I learned after being with Schlumberger for about 3 months that they had a big international setup all over the world. Any place they were drilling for oil, Schlumberger was there. And I thought, man, I'd love to go overseas. And the first thought that came to me is Egypt. I'd like to go to Egypt. So I applied for a transfer to Egypt, and they said, Egypt's closed. We don't need anybody there, but we need some guys in Libya. I said, well, that's right next door, so I'll take it. I did. They sent me to Germany. I worked there for a while, and then finally went on down to Libya.
All right. So you spent almost 3 years living in the Sahara.
Actually, it was 2.
2, okay. Yeah. You spent 2 years living in the Sahara. Deserts are known to be barren and rather lonely. What was it about the desert that helped you to stay past the work?
Well, I think the most exciting thing about the desert is sand. And the reason that's exciting is if you enjoy an adventurous experience, it's kind of fun to think you're the first guy that ever went there. So the sand covers up any evidence that anybody else was ever there. So you almost think like, gosh, I'm the first guy that ever set foot here. So any truck tracks that were in the sand or any evidence of anybody being there the day before, first breeze that comes in covers it. So you always felt like, I'm the first guy to be here. That's kind of exciting.
So each new day was a new adventure.
A new adventure.
So when you looked out on the desert, it just was kind of a sea of sand.
It was. But if you were looking at the top of the ocean, if you could get in a boat and you're floating amongst the waves and you look out, there's a beauty to the waves in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
There's a geometry, there's a symmetry, there's asymmetry as well. But in the desert you have the same thing. But instead of water, it's sand. And the stunning thing about the sand, it's probably all the same color, but depending on light, like noon light gave you one picture, one color for the sand. In the evening, the sun is going down, you got an entirely different color. So everything is changing. The hues, the colors are changing. There's an undulation in the sand, the wave action, shadows that are stunningly beautiful with various lighting. So I love that. The other thing was magnificent sunsets. You've seldom had a cloudy day, but sometimes the clouds came in the evening and the sun would set and those clouds would light up like a fireworks display. That was stunning. There was another thing, and I don't know how to explain it. I've never found anybody to help me with it, but it was on a rig. We started work about 6 in the evening. We were there for 24 hours. Just before the sun came up, it just started to peek over some of the dunes. It was in the spring, and there'd been a mist during the night. And the face of the dunes that we were looking at as we stood on the rig floor turned green. And then as the sun came up, the green went away. And I asked one of the geologists, I said, what is that? He said, well, he wasn't sure, but he'd heard that there were little spores of plant life that would instantly come to life with the right amount of moisture and when the sunlight was just right. But the minute the sun came up, they all died off. So I've never had that substantiated, but it was real. It wasn't coloration coming from the sun. It was actually something green on the face of the dunes, but I've never had an explanation for it. I don't think it was my imagination because others that were standing there saw it.
Saw it, yeah.
So it was cool.
Am I right in thinking that you saw snow up on the top of the rig?
Yeah, I wasn't up there, but the derrick man reported that it was snowing in the Sahara Desert. None of that snow got down below the derrick. That man was 150 feet in the air, so I guess by the time the snow dropped down toward the desert floor, it melted. That was in the winter. It was very strange, very strange. Yeah.
Wow.
Snow in the Sahara.
A lot of exciting things to see, I'm sure. Little black shiny rocks in the distance.
Well, now that's interesting that you mentioned that. There weren't any roads out there. There were no street signs. The wind covered all previous truck tracks generally, not always. But if you were moving from one location to another, the one thing that you looked for was the derrick on a drilling rig, right? But it's kind of interesting. You have the mirage effect in the desert floor. And when the sun's up, a little dark black rock lying 100 yards ahead in the white sand or the yellow-colored sand actually was magnified, and you think, there's the drilling site, there's the camp right over there. And of course you drive over to it and it's just nothing. There's nothing there. But it was magnified in such a way that it really distracted you from where you were going. You had to watch that. Yeah, mirages were huge in the desert, and they did look like water. It almost looked like you were back on the shores of the Mediterranean. It was really strange with the heat waves moving through the air just above the sand. You know, a lot of heat there.